interested. Tell us about your position. You're the strength coach for the Anaheim Ducks. Give me the official position and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm the head strength and conditioning coach. I'm with the team more than I'm with my family.
I'm sure.
Travel with the team. With them every day, games, practices, what have you. Take care of and coordinate, nutrition, supplementation, training. Have a say with on ice and off ice, obviously. And then I'm in charge of the development for our minor league team, and I have two coaches down there for the San Diego Gulls, and then also in charge of development for our draft picks and our kind of players in our system. So it's kind of with the team is primarily the job, but it also encompasses kind of everybody that's under that umbrella.
That sounds like a very cool position.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I love what I do, and I get to work with athletes every day and be in a sporting environment and be in a sporting world. So I'm very fortunate.
What did you do to get this position? What was your upbringing in the world of sports and nutrition?
You know what? It's funny. The hockey is a very small world, and I think it can work for you and it can work against you. And I've been very fortunate to be around some really good people. And when I first got started, I started with working in minor hockey, and I'm from Whitby, Ontario, Canada. So we have a very strong minor hockey program there, and I just kind of started there with young kids and what have you. And I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to work with a guy named Adam Foote.
Oh, yeah.
Played in the NHL for 20 years and played hard and, won Stanley Cups, gold medals, and pretty much everything. And he really, gave me an amazing opportunity to work with him and run his facility at the time. And it kind of opened the door to working with junior hockey at the Oshawa Generals, and then eventually getting a job with the Toronto Maple Leafs, working with the Toronto Marlies as a head strength coach. So,
wow.
Hockey's just a small world, and I kind of worked my way up and worked for some different companies and what have you. I worked for the Canadian Hockey League for a number of years under Mr. Dave Branch, and I got a call one day after I was kind of out of the team side of it, because I ended up opening my own facilities and what have you, and someone from the Anaheim Ducks was interested in me, and it just turned out to be a good opportunity for myself and my family. And like I said, the hockey world's very small. There was a couple people that had worked in Toronto when I was there and kind of recommended me, and they were influential people, and that's always nice to be recommended by people that you respect. So
you bet
it's worked favorably for me in that regard. So it is a small world, but I think it speaks to a little bit of just doing your job, doing the best you can, doing it well, and people taking notice. So I think that's the fortunate guys have looked at me and said, hey, we'll give this guy an opportunity, and I'm very grateful.
Well, that's fantastic. The hockey gods are definitely smiling on you. So how long have you been in this position?
I've been with the Ducks for 4 years. I was with the Marlies and Leafs for about 7 years.
Wow.
And then in that time, before I was with the Marlies, I had my own company. I still do. I have 3 facilities in Ontario, just outside of Toronto.
Fantastic. That just sounds like a great hockey life. And I'm with you. I'm a plastic surgeon, but I love talking about hockey, and I have found that it is a very small world. We're Duck season ticket holders, just so you know. My wife and I we sit in section 223. In fact, Sean, our producer, got to sit in those seats on Friday night with the Vegas Golden Knights. And by the way, he's from Vegas, so he's a bit of a Knights fan.
Don't hold it against me, though, please.
All right.
Yeah, but we love going to check out the Ducks, and these guys are in some serious shape. I mean, they are elite athletes. I mean, pound for pound, I'd put a hockey player up against anybody in strength and conditioning.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's where the game is now is, there's nobody that's really out of shape in our league anymore. And I think it kind of speaks to, how the game has evolved with the speed and the power that these guys are, exemplifying on the ice. And it's incredible, because the more that I've kind of been in hockey and worked with hockey athletes, it's become easier and easier to train them. if that makes sense, because it's,
Sure.
whereas before they had a lower training age, we call it, with basically gym experience, but now they're starting at a young age and they're learning, great movement patterns and, training efficiency and what have you, and they're coming to us, at the NHL level now with a lot more, almost ready to play a lot faster. You know what I mean? So it just makes the transition from a junior or minor league team or minor league athlete to a pro a lot easier, and it's incredible. Every year we get to see these athletes evolve, and it just makes the game faster and kind of more enjoyable to watch even.
We had Marty McSorley on the Dr. Hockey podcast last year, and he said that the guys were told not to train, not to get bigger, and not to, lift weights and to just, play hockey, skate as hard as they could, and not have any, sort of conditioning protocols that would make them too big because they needed to stay light. And he basically said that they ignored that and went to the gym and lifted really hard no matter what, because they knew that being bigger was better for hockey.
Yeah, and you know what? And I think that's evolved now to, I played football as a young athlete, I guess, and we trained a lot differently. But it's the type of training that we're doing now is really reinforcing athleticism, and making sure that our athletes are, can move in different planes and can kind of withstand the rigors of a season. And it's, he's right to a point where it's always good to be strong. Strength is never a weakness is one of the quotes that's up in our gym. And yes, you can fill that bucket too much and get too big and not be able to move. But if you can strike a balance where you have, you're equaling out those different components, whether it's flexibility or power development or what have you, but strength is definitely one of them. And I think, what we're seeing now is making sure that our guys have those equal buckets. Because if you have one of those that is almost overflowing, you're neglecting some of the others. And it's
absolutely.
It's interesting to see that change over amount of time.
Oh, no question. I mean, now the guys told me to check out the power plate because they said this was one of the things that you're using with training. And so for the last 2 months, I've become actually a power plate addict. I'm totally into it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I have my theories as a physician of why I like it and why I think it's enhancing my workouts. But I'd be interested to hear your theory as to why, specifically for hockey players, does the power plate actually make a difference?
Hey, you know what? I think it's a tool, and I think it's a tool that's probably in the majority of, pro locker rooms that I've been in. I think it's, even when I was back with the Leafs, we had one, and it's one of those things that's a tool and kind of a standard in a professional room, which is, I think speaks volumes. I mean, I don't have anything to do with power plate other than the fact that we use them.
Right.
So I don't want to say that I'm selling it necessarily, but
yeah, me either.
Let
me be clear. I don't have any. Yeah, we're not being sponsored by Power Plate or anything like that.
No,
But I did try it out at sort of like, okay, let me train like a hockey dude, and I definitely found that it enhanced my stretching, and it certainly enhanced all my core work, like in a big way.
Well, you know what? It's one of those tools that, when I speak a little bit in the off season, what have you, different strength and conditioning clinics and stuff like that. And one of the presentations I did was about, a lot of the athletes nowadays are kind of, they get into the fancy stuff too quickly. If you know what I mean. Like, they want to do the Instagram videos of them doing this, really technical exercise, or they want to, they want to jump ahead to get to the fancy stuff. And for me, for our guys in training, it's about mastering basics.
Right.
And one of those things that comes with mastering basics is the ability to accept load. And I think one thing we use the power plate for is to teach the athletes to dampen the vibration. So for me, it speaks to the ability to accept that load, to make sure that you don't just hop on and let it rattle you around like a milkshake maker, what I mean, like a blender.
But wait, that's what I like best. No, I'm just kidding.
But you get on it to teach your body and teach your teach your body and your muscles to basically dampen that vibration, to accept it and make sure that you are in control of it. And that's kind of how I teach it. And I think it's just something that we can always go back to, and it doesn't have to be done with an exorbitant amount of load. It doesn't have to be, because again, I think as a society now, they want to get into something and they want to go to the nth degree. They want to push the red line right away, and it's one of those things where you can kind of pull back and teach before you really crank up the volume by any means. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I think that when you stick with basics, you're gonna do better in the long run anyway, because this is all about injury prevention and performance. And so you have to do the basics first and foremost and do them well before. I mean, fancy stuff is all about, I think it's fine tuning, and I think that it's really important that's on your radar screen. But when it, for my money, there's nothing better than really doing some standard workouts with building the big muscles and protecting your joints, because that's what hockey is. It is a 60-minute abuse session for these guys every second, third, or every other night in some cases. And for their joints and their muscles to hold up over time, they have to be strong. They have to be ready for that.
Well, and you kind of mentioned it. If you look at our schedule for the next 30 days, starting on Saturday, we are literally playing almost every other night.
It's brutal.
We're playing in the best league in the world, and it's, ideally when we work out, it's post game. So when your guy came to the game the other night, after the game we had a 30-minute lift.
Yep.
Because that's our, in my opinion, that's our best opportunity to get some real muscle work done, or rep work. So we can kind of, during the day and warm ups and stuff like that, and on a practice day it's more, power production work, it's more nervous system work. But post game we try to get some lifting done, so that they're going to be sore after the game anyways, and we're going to add on to that a little bit, so they'll be able to kind of recover from not only the game but the lift as well. And power play is one of the tools that we use there, because there's no way on our 43rd game of the season, nobody's in there lifting real crazy weights.
No way.
Because again, we got to play the next day, or we got to get on a plane and fly for 4 hours and then play the next day at a different time in a different time zone. So
brutal.
I have to make sure that, along with our medical staff and our doctors and our coaches, that we're managing that. We're managing that stress. We're managing as much of the stress as we can, knowing the fact that they're jumping into the best league in the world, where, like you said, it's like these high-powered machines running into each other every couple of seconds. If you try to do too much off the ice, then you're going to be in big trouble. And if there isn't a base of strength there to begin with, then you're going to be in really big trouble.
So with the conditioning that you do for the Ducks compared to the Gulls, is there a difference when the guys come up from San Diego to Anaheim, that they have to make up some ground, or are they primed and ready to go when they show up?
Well, you know what? The one good thing about having San Diego close, and then the AHL schedule is a little bit different. So typically they have more days in between games. So realistically, they can train a lot more. So that's why it's such a good development league, because the development happens off the ice as well.
Got it.
So we're able to get a lot more off-ice training done, and we have a great staff in San Diego. And the head coach down there, Dallas Eakins, who was formerly in Toronto, Edmonton, he really is on board with that, and he understands the value of the physical development component of it. So he's very supportive of what we're doing. So a lot of the time when those guys do come up, the only adjustment they're making is obviously the speed of play, and the hockey side of it, which I would say I have nothing to do with, but that's not really my job. So when they come up to us, they're physically, yes, they're ready. They're almost sometimes more ready, because they've had those more breaks in between games. So it's
right.
It's just them acclimating to the NHL versus the AHL, which anybody who's played in both would tell you that there is a pretty sizable difference in the speed and where you need to be and all those things. But yeah, from a physical standpoint, it's usually they're a little bit ahead of the game, just because of the time between games and the more opportunities to train.
Well, I mean, we did have Seth Jones on the podcast as well, and he said it is a different level. He said when you make that transition into the NHL, it is like a wake-up call like you've never had. He said the speed is blistering comparatively speaking, and it just takes, you have to get used to it before you can really play in that. And obviously he's gone on to be this is, I think, third year in a row as an all-star, but it definitely, I see it. The game is so much. I've been watching this game and playing this game since I was 4 years old, and it's going at a rate that I can't get over it. I mean, the guys like Matthew Barzell and I mean, even like this Kiefer Sherwood on the Ducks and Carl Hagelin, these guys ski at a speed that's really, it's hard to comprehend.
Yeah, you know what, and it's funny because the crop of young guys now that are kind of playing for us on a nightly basis, it's, you look at the profiles and the way that we do our testing. What I look for is from a physical standpoint, from an off-ice standpoint anyways, is athleticism and physical development. And when you see who scores high in our tests and what it comes back as, it's the best athletes are winning our testing, which to me says that our testing is good, because it's giving me what I want to see is in terms of athletic development. Best athletes are winning because they're not one-trick ponies. They're not going to go in and win one test, but they're going to be in the top 3 in all of them. And that tells me a well-balanced. The buckets are level. They're doing all the right things in the off-season, and Kiefer is definitely one of those guys that is dialed in on what he needs to be. You know what I mean? And I'm sure he only has a bright future to look forward to.
No, he's really. I love watching him play. He's super speedy, and he's got a good nose for the game. And I think he's got his best years are certainly coming up, because he's getting going. I like watching him play, and this Pontus Aberg really looks great. He's got a lot of speed, skill. He moves well. His agility, I think, is above average. He's able to really weave through traffic in a way that I haven't seen a lot of the guys on the Ducks do in a while. Maybe since Corey Perry, 7-8 years ago. I mean, Corey's doing his thing in his way now, but this Pontus Aberg kind of reminds me of Corey Perry.
Yeah, and you know what? I think some of that credit should definitely go to our on-ice coaches too. We have a skills and skating development coach, Larry Barron, who's really made a big impact in terms of what he's brought to our club, and he's somebody that I connect a lot with, because that connection from on and off ice is huge. If he can see something that makes sense to me, or we can teach kind of the same movement patterns and what have you, we're seeing a lot of improvement, because the athlete is hearing the same thing on and off the ice. So obviously there's differences, with them wearing the skates and navigating the ice and whatever, but there's a lot of similarities, and you can kind of cross over quite a bit if you have, people who are both open-minded and willing to learn, and Larry's been great in that sense. So it makes my job easier when you're working with guys like Pontus, that, you can cue and teach in the same regard, and they're going to hear those same things on the ice, so it just makes things a lot easier working together.
How much of a role do you play in getting the guys back onto the ice after an injury? Say like this injury that we just saw with Cam Fowler, for instance. He was out, so obviously he's got to take care of his injury. Are you working with him on strength and conditioning during that injury, or does he go to the orthopedic team and they take care of it and comes back to you later on?
Yeah, I think everybody kind of has a role, and we have like I said before, we have a great medical staff and team doctors and what have you. So it starts with them, obviously, with whenever an injury happens, and it kind of filters down to us in terms of, the return to play protocol, and everybody kind of chips in their area, and I think that's where, there's a lot of crossover in strength and conditioning and the therapy side, and we have a great staff in that sense, and it's again what's best for the athlete, and sitting together and planning those things out, making sure that we're hitting all the markers that the doctors want us to hit, and reading the athlete. There's different types of monitoring that we do with that. But with a guy like Cam, I mean, that was a tough injury. That really his body was okay. It was just the puck and hitting him in the face. That's
I know.
Obviously never fun, but he's back and he feels great. I think he's going to be obviously a huge help to our team again. He's one of our stalwarts back there. So.
He's fantastic.
It's really, that's where it's fun for me too, because I get to learn from our doctors. I get to learn from our medical staff to, how do we treat this, and it's part of the job that makes it, really enjoyable. Is you get to be around people who are very good at what they do, and it's constantly a learning environment.
Well, and the Ducks have an amazing medical team. I'm pretty good buddies with Bao T. Grant, who is the facial trauma doctor for you guys. She's a OMFS surgeon, and she's incredible. I think she's still working on getting some teeth into Brian Allen pretty soon. So
nice. Yeah, we're so fortunate there. We have not only are they incredibly intelligent, but they get being around the game, and I think
totally.
that helps a ton too. Just knowing the athletes and knowing what they're going through and all that kind of stuff. We're very fortunate.
Yeah, I mean the folks that you have are quite amazing. The Ducks should be commended for really picking up some real experts. And I see the Kings guys a fair amount too, and the Kings have an incredible staff as well. Jason Snibby is a great friend of mine who's the hip consultant to the Kings. And, I asked him, I said, what do you think about, Ryan Kessler's hip? And, will this guy ever be the same? He goes, it's always possible. He goes, but at his age and with that type of an injury, it's really difficult to come back the same way. And he's just going to have to find a new way to be Ryan Kessler and be effective on the ice. And he said that last year, and I think he's right. It looks like Kessler is playing a different game just because he has to. I don't think that you can expect after an injury like he had for things to just, all of a sudden go back to normal. That's a hard thing, I think, for some people to get, but these guys are pros, and they have folks like you who can support them in those changes. And I'm sure that's a big part of what you do. Hips, tell me about that in terms of your training. What do you do for guys, especially like a Kessler? Are there specific exercises? Are there specific protocols that you go after the protection of the hips?
Yeah, I think at first it starts with what our doctors do in our screening and stuff like that when the athletes first come, and that kind of tells us if there's anything to be kind of worried about. But hip health and hip quality and hip movement is something that is a huge focus, just like spine and what have you. But hip focus. We're doing hip mobility drills daily. Just because skating is a very unnatural position. Everybody's body is different. Everybody, you try to get into that ideal skating position, but really it doesn't exist. It's finding what works for the individual, and sometimes, whatever that skating stride is tougher on the body than others, or, maybe they have some bad habits that they've held on to from junior or playing for a long time. But I think it's like anything else. It's putting together a detailed plan for each athlete, making sure that it's specific to them, and having good habits around practicing and playing. Like our players spend hours before the game, after the game, honing their craft. And I think a guy like Kessler, who is uber dedicated to making himself healthy, and the credit for him playing this year goes to him because he's put in all the work to do it. So it's
absolutely, it's
one of those things about building routines and making sure that our hips are healthy. I think right away it starts with posterior chain strength, glutes, hamstrings, low back, making sure that whole structure is working well and strong. It comes with core work, like you said. It's making sure that the belly button down is all working. So we do some testing in training camp that kind of tells us where our guys are at in terms of that. I'm lucky enough to consult with Dr. Stu McGill, who, in my opinion, is probably the foremost back expert in the world. So if I have questions on guys, not that I share information, but it's always nice to have guys like that as a resource who can, kind of give you advice as to, methods, exercises, what have you to kind of use with athletes, and that's amazing. And obviously we have our team of doctors who are fantastic too. So it's a team effort really of making sure that we're building things around these athletes to make them successful.
I got to believe that the psoas muscles on these guys are like the size of my arm. They have to be. I can only imagine. Because you could see, their legs, they look one way on the ice, but they're all covered up in lots of, uniform. Their legs are they're these, massive engines of muscle that move them. I got to believe that their hip flexors are just enormous.
Yeah, and I think when you look at a hockey body, right, it's very lower half heavy for sure. And I was saying to one of our guys the other day, you look around our room, it's amazing how much it has evolved, because guys look more symmetrical than they ever have. Like big quads with big asses too, and like filled out properly, all in all the right areas in terms of skating and efficiency. So it's whereas before, years ago, you see guys with a little bit of lower cross syndrome going on, and shortened hip flexors and big butts, but nothing else. So that leads to problems. But now it's you're definitely seeing guys that are more symmetrical and achieving more of a balance. A guy like Barzell, like he's from the belly button down. It's a finely tuned engine in terms of the distribution of strength and muscle is key. If you're just like anything, if you overdo it in one area, well, you're going to neglect another. So it's like all my buddies now who do bench press too much and not enough chin-ups. At their age, it's better to do the chin-ups than the bench press.
It's so true, but the bench press is a lot easier.
Just lie down.
Just lie down and start pushing it. But the chin-ups are not easy, and if you can find guys my age that can do 10 chin-ups, it's somebody that's really working hard. That's for sure.
Yeah. Definitely.
What's the nutritional approach to hockey when you're? I mean, obviously in season and off season are two different things. But when these guys are in a stretch like you've got coming up here, what are the Ducks eating? Other than breadcrumbs thrown to them from on the pond. But like really, what are the Ducks eating that is really keeping them going? Because obviously they are burning calories at a rate that would really shock anybody. It's a massive amount.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing to see when we have our monitors on guys, see what kind of calories they go through. It's incredible, and I think I'm lucky we have a nutritionist on staff that works with me, Kim Storm, and she's been fantastic with just ideas, variety in terms of what we're feeding our players, and I think it's called the Never Hungry League for a reason. There's always food around, and I learned that in my first year when I put on a bunch of weight. You don't have to eat it if you're not playing.
That's right. It's for the players.
But what do we feed them? I think it's kind of a boring answer, but it's one that I've said from day one is it's a balanced diet. It's nothing fancy. Obviously, they go through a lot of calories. Their carbohydrate intake is going to be a little bit higher. But that's supporting their activity.
Of course.
I think your lean proteins. In working with Kim, you realize that the real food is so important. And I know that's kind of a no nonsense statement or a obvious statement, but it's true. And we try to get them as much real food as possible. So when we go on the road, we look for good restaurants to get food from. We look for cold pressed juices. We look for anything to help. My big focus this year has been or every year really, is your immune system and gut health. So if we can keep our guys healthy, if we can avoid having stretches of the flu and the average cold or whatever, and it doesn't go around our room, then that's a win for us. That we keep players on the ice that way. You know what I mean? So it's making sure that we're eating a balanced diet as best we can, and really locating food from great sources, and trying to teach them at the same time about what they should be eating when they're away from us.
Mark, this is Sean, the producer. I was wondering, do you guys have sort of go-to meals for right before the game? You guys like lay out peanut butter and jelly sandwiches? Do you have some kind of a go-to kind of a pregame or pregame and postgame meals? Do you guys have like set stuff that you give for the guys? Or does that kind of change?
No, we'll have our pregame meal will be after our morning skate, so that'll be the biggest and last kind of knife and fork meal. That'll be around 1 o'clock. So that'll be the heaviest meal, and then they'll eat again at 3:30, 4 o'clock. Call that the pregame snack. And so that'll be some lighter food, some sandwiches, stuff like that. Every player has their own kind of routine or thing that they like to do, things that they like to eat. But typically in our dressing room, then we'll have snacks that if guys are still hungry, they can have some fresh fruit. We will have some. We won't have peanut butter and jelly necessarily, but you can make one if you wanted to. We'll have some some steel-cut oats, oatmeal, some different nut butters, what have you. Bars, we use some different types of carbohydrate protein bars. But it's pretty standard. Post-game, a lot of teams still, I think pretty much every team still does this. We do have pizza post-game right away. I know that sounds kind of odd, but
no, it doesn't.
I'm pretty sure every NHL team has it. With our team, it's protein shakes first, obviously, and within those shakes we'll have typically a plant-based protein or a whey protein with a product it's called UCAN. It's a slow-release carbohydrate, so it just helps them recover, helps them kind of get ready for the next day. Then they'll have some pizza, and then depending on where we are, we'll either have a team or a meal at home, which is at the Honda Center, or else we'll have a meal on the plane or at a hotel or what have you. And again, we always try to hit the same kind of requirements for the meals: lean proteins, good carbohydrates, vegetables. Like all those standards. Kind of boring, but there isn't really. Nutrition is boring if it works when it's boring. We try to avoid the peaks and valleys of it with too much sugar or too much fat. It's a balanced approach every time.
Well, I mean, the pizza, what is your reasoning for the pizza? I have my, biochemical approach in thinking about glycogen stores and things like that, but why is the pizza you feel important after a game?
Well, I think it goes back to the caloric output, and I think at the end of the day, is it the best food you could possibly eat? No. I'm sure there's other mixtures that you could put together, but it's convenient. The players like it. It's kind of, it's hearty food. It's nice and fork food, but without, overdoing your stomach, and trying to tax your body a little bit too much. That's soon after a game. I always like them to have their shake first. So to me, I've noticed that if they have the shake first, they probably eat less pizza. And then
Sure.
At least if I get that shake in there first, I know that that's going to hit their stomach first, and it's going to help that digestion a little bit better. I know that maybe sounds crazy, but that's my belief. And I think the pizza is just putting some calories back in, and it's just kind of satiating them a little bit to make sure that, they're not starving. And I think if you're in a point where you're starving for something to eat, you're probably going to make some bad decisions, or, maybe it stunts your recovery to some degree. You know what I mean? I think it's just...
Well, the protein, the protein makes sense. The protein makes sense because you're giving protein encourages gastric emptying. So if you lay down like a big load of pizza first, and then I don't care what you put in after, your gut's going to be slow. So you're very correct and wise in putting in the protein first, because then it gets your gut revved up. You get gastric emptying, then whatever else you're going to put down is going to get digested faster and not sit there and create a big insulin surge and all the other things that really do slow down metabolism and cause, that lethargic sort of postprandial, the post-eating, like kind of blues. And so, I think a good protein shake and then follow it with whatever else and some fiber, and you're good to go.
Mark, some of us take our pizza, though, very, very seriously. What kind of pizza are we talking about here?
That's a good point.
Are we going for just like some generic pizza, Pizza Hut pizza? Are there some pizza requirements going on here for the team?
It's funny because every city is different, so now that I've done this for a few years, you know the good cities, the good pizza.
Absolutely. Pittsburgh's got Minios.
Pittsburgh, Nashville's got Jets, which is a big
Yes.
hit.
Oh, yeah.
New York is always pretty good. But yeah, there's some different cities that you wouldn't expect it to be good, but somehow it is. But yeah, the guys know when it's good too. And in Buffalo, there's no pizza; it's just straight chicken wings. So
nice.
Do you guys like Little Caesars in Detroit, or is that just not on the list?
It's okay. I think we have to get it because we're in the rink.
Otherwise they're gonna be like, no, you guys can't come in. What are you showing up with Domino's here? No way.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, what about candy? Or little like stuff that you would assume is bad. Like you hear about Marshawn Lynch likes to have Skittles on the sideline, and Alvin Kamara, the Saints, likes to eat airheads on the side. Do you allow for, or do some of the guys have any kind of weird or quirky kind of pregame candy rituals that we should know about?
You know what? I think that's one of the good things about being in hockey, that the athletes involved are like so normal. And nothing against any of those guys, but the hockey guys are such down-to-earth, humble, normal guys that we don't get requests like that, and I think that speaks to just hockey's culture a little bit in terms of, where these guys are, how they're raised. And so, again, that's nothing against anybody else. That's just what I've seen. they're just more. There's one other good thing with these guys is that they're always looking for that edge. You know,
Of course.
They're educated themselves, and they work with private strength coaches in the summer times or other teams or whatever. And I think a lot of us in the NHL, I think a lot of us speak the same language in terms of guidelines and best practice and stuff like that. So I think they hear a lot of the same things. There isn't too many guys that are out on their own saying, "Yeah, eat skills in between periods," And I think that speaks to, I think, again, the culture of hockey and the type of people involved, which I think is great because you go from one team to the other, and there's a lot of carryover. A lot of people are doing some really good things, so I think it makes our jobs a little bit easier, I'm sure.
Well, the Skittles between periods is what my kids prefer, and they hit up those local spots in the Honda Center pretty hard for everything from every junk food around. But I can't imagine that a hockey player wants to eat any of that
I know
stuff.
some of it's probably for maybe a little sugar rush or something. Obviously, it's probably not the best thing for you. But I imagine some guys are doing this for maybe some kind of superstitious reasons. Are there any maybe not related to food or candy? Are there any kind of odd superstition things happening, pregame rituals that you notice in the locker room about the Ducks?
Yeah, I mean, there's. I'm not going to call anybody out, but there's definitely some things that relacing and relacing skates a few times a day. Taping sticks over and over and over again, like stuff that I was just you shake your head. Putting the sticks in certain spots in the room and it can't touch anybody else's stick. There's some bizarre rituals or superstitious stuff that still go on. I think you're seeing less and less of it with the young kids that come up, but some of the older guys that are still around, it's pretty entertaining.
That's funny.
Still a thing. Yeah.
Well, I got a friend who won't step into an operating room unless Johnny Cash is playing, so he absolutely won't. He won't operate.
Yeah.
Like there's no other music. It's only Johnny Cash, and in a 7-hour free flap, that's a very, very brutal situation for everybody else. Well, this is great, Mark. I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on with us. I'm jealous of your job. It sounds like the coolest thing going. And yeah, if you guys have anything else that you ever want to come on and chat about, if you think of something cool, this is the Dr. Hockey podcast. Jason's not with me today because he's in Hawaii with his family, but he's a pain doc and he does back injections and everything like that, and he would have loved to chat with you about this stuff. He would have had 98 more questions to go. So.
Well, yeah, we'll have to do it again, and maybe we'll once the season's over, get up to where you guys record, and we'll do it in person and get into it a little bit more.
Yeah, that'd be great. The other thing too is if there's ever a day like an off day, if you're at the Honda Center, I'll blow over there. You can show me how they can go around the gym there. I'd love to check it out. It'd be pretty cool to kind of see that.
We'll do that for sure.
Awesome. Well, otherwise, just come find me right next to the Ducks penalty box. I'm always sitting over there and cheering the guys on. We sit literally like next to, mostly we sit next to Ryan Kessler. Actually, he spends a lot of time in there, but it's pretty fun to watch. So anyway, really appreciate it. Mark Fitzgerald, strength and conditioning coach for the Anaheim Ducks. Thanks for being on with us.
Thanks very much for the time. Appreciate it.
All right, take care. Thanks, Mark.
Appreciate the time, Mark. Have a good night, man.
Okay, man. Thanks, guys.
Take care.